our guest tonight, started his NFL career as an undrafted free agent and finished with 2 Super Bowl rings with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was on the field at BYU for Lavelle Edwards' final home game, and when BYU beat Utah in Salt Lake City to wrap up the coach's legendary career. He made a living with the mean and nasty on the defensive line, an area where BYU's trying to improve in time for the Big 12. Our pleasure to welcome from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Chris Hoke to the Wise Guys. Hey, welcome.
Hey, the Wise Guys. Dave and Blaine, what's up, brother?
What's up, Chris?
We have been working on this interview for months. We're so glad to have you.
I'm so sorry it's been so difficult, man. That's on me. There's so many things going on, and this with life and church and everything. It's nonstop.
Let's start with a big moment. Take us in the locker room just before Lavelle Edwards' final home game against New Mexico when President Gordon B. Hinckley walks in, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he addresses the team. Where were you sitting? What do you remember?
Listen, I was right there close, and it was an amazing experience. I don't think we expected it to be as big of a deal as it was, right? And when President Hinckley came in there and spoke to the team, it was special, right? Anytime you can be in the presence of a prophet of God, it's a special moment. And to hear him talk about Coach Edwards, a man that we all love dearly, and so many people loved, and talk about him the way that he did, and then let us know that they were going to change the name of Cougar Stadium to Lavelle Edwards Stadium. And to be a part of that experience was special, right? It was a special time. You know, the season that wasn't going the way we wanted to, so it was great to end the season on a win against Utah. I'd be able to spend that. And here, let me share this with you guys. So here's a special thing.
All right.
So, and Blaine, I got bragging rights here because I was the only one that played in Lavelle Edwards' last game that he ever coached.
What do you mean the only one?
Because the only BYU player. Because Lavelle coached that last game against Utah. Then he went and he was the offensive coordinator for the Hula Bowl.
That's right.
And I was the only Cougar who played in the Hula Bowl after that. And so I was there for a week with Lavelle and Patty, and Bobby Bowden was the head coach, and it was awesome.
That is so cool.
I was the only Cougar player that played in his final game he ever coached.
That's trivia.
And that's a special experience that you got to spend, because I know Patty was over there with him. And people don't realize, Chris, how good of friends Bobby Bowden and Lavelle were. They were very close friends. And I don't know that people understand how respected Coach Edwards was in the coaching community across the country. And you got a glimpse of that when you were there at the Hula Bowl and as you went on and played. I mean, tell people a little bit about Lavelle's legacy and how these other coaches just revered him.
Well, you know, for one thing, he was a heck of a college football coach, right? One of the best of all time. And so they respected him for his coaching ability, right? They respected him for, you can go back, but he was one of the pioneers of bringing the passing game. Now, they'll argue that was another guy. But Coach Edwards was part of all of that evolution, right? Of bringing the passing game into college football. And so they respected him for that part. But I think what they respected him the most was for the kind of man he was. He's just an honorable man, a respectful man. And a lot of those coaches were like that back then, guys. I mean, a lot of those old school coaches were men that were honorable, good men that were loyal to their team. They were loyal to their players. They're loyal to the university and were God-fearing. I mean, they're just good people. It's a different time right now in college football. But back then, Coach Edwards was really well respected for the kind of man he was.
Yeah, well said. You mentioned that, so you played in the Hula Bowl, so you went a little beyond, but so there was that game where, isn't the famous quote from President Hinckley, "Don't muff it"?
That was the New Mexico game.
He said, "Don't muff it."
He was talking to you, Chris.
Which you guys did not do. But then the following week, you guys went up to Utah and you rallied to beat the Utes 34-27 to send Coach out with a final victory in the regular season at BYU. How much did that mean to you to not only send Lavelle out, but to do it on the road at Utah? It can't get better than that, can it?
It can't get better than that. One thing was we saved from him going out on a losing record.
Yeah.
Right. If we would have lost that game, the season would have been a losing record. It's been a bad taste in his mouth and our mouth. And, I don't think we knew, though, Blaine, that we were living in history, right? That this was such a big moment. You're in college. You're not worried about all those things. You're more worried about, life, and you're worried about girls, and you're worried about school, you're worried about getting to the next level when you're a senior in college. But when Coach Edwards came into the team meeting room there in the Smith Field House and said, guys, this is my last year. This was in August during training camp. I don't think we understood that season was going to be such an amazing season, that to be a part of that with Coach Edwards, and to go and win that game in Utah was a great way to put a cap on a phenomenal, Coach Tomlin would say, put a cherry on top of a phenomenal season.
That's such a great point, because it seems like the farther you get removed from those experiences, the more, I guess the best word is perspective that we get about those things. And we look back and go, wow. Like I lots of times that I spent with you guys and with Coach and all that, I look back and say, I wish I would have appreciated it more. I have a tremendous appreciation for it now. But I wish I would have recognized how amazing that was and appreciated it more then. So your roster years, and by the way, everyone, we're with former Cougar, 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chris Hoke, on the Wise Guys Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, ysguys.com. Your roster years at BYU, 1994, then you head out on a mission, and then 97 through 2000, you finished with 33 and a half tackles for loss and 10 sacks. Impressive.
Nice.
So that's not great.
No, come on,
it's
Chris.
all right.
It's
Come
so
on.
good.
It was good enough to get me in the NFL.
Right. So as a former D lineman, what do you want to see? Because this is a big jump for BYU to go into a Power 5 conference into the Big 12. What do you want to see from BYU's D-line as they begin play in the Big 12 next year?
That's a loaded question. That's a big question. Listen, I think part of the problem is the technique was subpar last year. And I played in a Pittsburgh Steelers defense where technique was everything, right? I mean, we had some of the best defenses. I played in some of the best defenses in NFL history with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. And it was all about playing technique and not worrying about making plays. And last year, the technique was below the line. I mean, I don't know how many times I've lost in my mind when I saw a guy playing a double team and playing two guys and didn't know how to play a double team. Yeah. I mean, my son's a freshman in high school. He knows how to play a double team. You play one guy and you anchor in them and you play the outside guy or wherever the double team's coming from. And that wasn't happening. Or they weren't playing with their hands. They were playing with their chest. And they were out here like this rather than having their hands in front of them playing so you can get off blocks. There wasn't much technique being played. There wasn't good pad level. And the part of the frustration, I think, watching the defense over the last several years, there was no scheme. There was always a gap that was uncovered, and you can't play defense if you're not gapped out, right? I mean, Coach LeBeau was probably rolling over watching some of these games, even though LeBeau didn't watch the games, but he's out in Cincinnati. But if you're not gapped out, you don't got a defense, and there was always a gap open. And so you're hoping, I think with the new scheme, you'll see better play up front with Sione Puha out there playing D-line. He played for the Jets in the NFL. He played really their defensive line, their 3-4 defense played a lot like we played in Pittsburgh. And so you're going to see some technique. You're going to see pad level. You're going to see footwork, and you're going to see gap control. Because if you don't have that, I'm telling you right now, you're going to be giving up. You think you give up all? Who was that team that BYU played a couple of years ago in the bowl game that was freezing cold down in where'd they play?
Was it Alabama, Birmingham, or
yeah.
They ran for over 200 yards on them. Think Alabama, Birmingham's going to run for 200 plus on you. You better wait till some of these Big 12 teams come in. They're going to run for 400 plus.
Yeah, Chris, here you have to do me a favor. You need to go on wiseguys.com. And I know you have no time because you're a stake president and all that.
But have your secretary do it.
You got to go on the Wise Guys, and you need to find when Sione Puha came on the show a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
And just listen to his chapters, if nothing else. And it is going to put such a gigantic smile on your face.
Sure.
Because he is going to talk about what's important to him. And he talks about, because we forget, the Jets have been awful for a lot of years, but not when Sione was there.
No, listen.
Not when Sione was there.
We played against them. I remember we played them in the playoffs. We played them regular season. Those were tough games, man. They ran the football. And they had a kind of a similar identity to the Steelers back then. They weren't as good as us, but they had a similar identity that we did. Yeah. Sione was a big part of that in the middle.
Well, we talk about he goes in and talks about 2 gap versus 1 gap, and so talk to us about 1 gap. And then he went through the little nuances of one gap doesn't mean you just go as hard as you can up the field, because then they just wash you down. He says one gap means you're responsible for the gap, and you play through this part of the player, and you do this, and your hand has to be in this position, and this is what your footwork needs to be like. And I will stand for nothing less than that, or you won't play. And it was just,
I love it.
And
that's
I
how
honestly,
you play, though. That's how you play the next level. Listen, too many people, it was beating my brain in the NFL that you're not here to make plays. You're here to make your play, and you're here to do your job and not let everybody else make their play when it's their time. And as a 3-4 defensive lineman, which he played in, he'll know this. It's all about good pad level, good footwork, good hand placement. I mean, you see too many people right now crossing over. I've never seen anybody make a play or stand up on a double team when they're crossing over their feet. You got to stay square, and you got to step replace as you're moving down the line. There's a way to play D-line. And I know Sione will get them right, because if not, they won't play.
So you got Jay Hill,
Jay
Justin
has that same philosophy. You need to listen to it for me, and then I want you to call me, and you're just gonna go, Blaine, I liked it. You're gonna like it.
How do you feel about this defensive group? Gennaro's back, and then Papinga's back, and Enna is back, and you mentioned Sione, and then Jay Hill with the kind of the mastermind who was a disciple of Kalani's defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think, Jay Hill has been proven as a head coach. He's done it at the Division I level. And I think with him having the energy and the scheme, I think we having Guck back, Justin Enna back, and having Papinga back, and Gennaro's still there. But Gennaro did a good job on the back end. And really Sione, these are guys that know what it takes to get it done. They've been on successful teams. They've been in successful programs. They're pros. And I'm really excited about the change up in the scheme. When I say this, I really mean this. They're going to be gap sound, and they're going to play downhill. Last year, they weren't gap sound. They weren't playing downhill. They were playing sideline to sideline. They weren't playing. The linebackers play downhill. They don't go lateral. And last year, they were taught to go lateral. Linebackers take a power step, and they diagnose the play, and they're blowing up everything. They want to be the first hitter. That wasn't the case last year. That wasn't the strategy. So I think this everything's going to change. The scheme's going to change. The way they coach is going to change. And I think they've got to change up some players. I think you're going to see kind of an overhaul of that team over the next few years to really fit the kind of scheme, the attacking scheme they want to have.
Yeah, and they've had some transfers come in and some new young players that are stepping up. And frankly, they're developing some of the younger guys that I think you're going to be impressed with too, Chris. But here's an interesting thing, and I'm going to say this without giving away too much. There are still some transfers that possibly could come that needed to stay where they were and finish this semester out to be eligible. So they didn't come during the first window, but there's another window in May, and I think you're going to see BYU add a couple of other transfers on the defensive side that will be immediately helping them as they get in the Big 12. So I can't get too into that, but I can tell you that'll be good. That'll be good.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee those guys. There's a reason why they're transferring, right? There's no guarantee that those guys are going to be great.
Right.
Last year, a couple years ago, you had the Nakua brothers come, and they were unbelievable. But then you've had a couple other guys like Brooks, and you had Heimuli come. Those guys didn't do much. So it's not a sure shot that these guys are going to come in and contribute and be a big time players for I was going to say Steelers, for the Cougars.
Yeah, it's funny because you like guys that, remember when Puka and Sampson transferred, they were starters and some of the best players on their team. They transferred because they wanted to be closer to their mom and they wanted the culture. And it's nice if you get a guy that is actually proven to transfer. And that doesn't happen very often, because you're right, Chris. Most of these guys are like, I don't like the role I have here, therefore I'm leaving. So every guy BYU can get that wants a culture change that's already a proven commodity. Yeah. One of the guys I'm thinking of, and we'll see because it's a different level, but Aiden Robbins, who's the running back that's coming in, Chris, was a 1,000-yard rusher last year at UNLV. And we talked to Kelly Papinga about him. He's like, oh, dude, we knew he was their guy. We designed the defense, and Boise State was the top 20 defense, and he still rushed for 123 yards on us. So guys like that are a little more proven commodity, but you're exactly right. The guys that are transferring because they weren't playing as much as they wanted to, who knows about those guys, right?
Yeah, and I struggle with this transfer portal. I get it. People say you can't survive this nowadays in college football without it. But I just think it's kind of unfair to some of these players that come in and they work their tails off.
Yeah.
Right? I think of last year, what's his name? The running back, Pingo, what's his name? Man, I'm bad with names.
Let's see who. Chris Brooks?
No, Chris Brooks came in. He stayed. He was gonna graduate, and he stayed around.
Lapini Katoa?
Katoa. Yeah, Katoa.
Katoa.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he was supposed to be the guy, and then they go out and they bring Brooks in, and so I just think, sometimes it's a bummer for these guys that work their tails off in the program and develop, and it's your time to shine, and they go out and get somebody else. So I hope there's some prudence used and some, and they don't just start grabbing guys. I think they should do it the right way and not hurt your program. The people say, well, listen, I'm not going to come to BYU because it doesn't matter. I mean, at some point they may go out and get somebody else like free agency in the NFL and replace me. Give these guys opportunities to prove themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's got to be great balance. Hey, let's talk about you just a little bit, Chris, because you had to prove yourself. It seems like over and over again at BYU, you had to prove yourself. Let's go back to the 2001 NFL draft. That draft comes and goes, and you're not drafted, right? So nobody called your name. The Steelers signed you as a free agent. That's not an easy pathway into that league. Jamie says in an interview, your wife Jamie says that as a child, you had a picture in your room that read, "The future belongs to those who believe," right? So what kept you believing that your future was in the NFL, even though you weren't drafted and had to make it the hard way as a free agent?
It was hard. Listen, but I knew all I needed was a chance. And, the senior year, going into the senior year, I had heard that I had an opportunity that teams were interested, have a good senior year. And listen, it was a real lesson to me that when the team does well, that individuals get these accolades, they get these awards, they get drafted. When the team doesn't do well, you see a lot of guys that you anticipated getting drafted. I mean, look at some of these linebackers that were supposed to go in the fourth round, third round, and now you don't even know they're going to get picked up, right? So some players, I mean, it's when teams don't do well, it hurts the individual stock. And, we went 6-6 that year, and I didn't get drafted. And that's okay because that was part of my journey. And got picked up by the Steelers, but I kept telling my agent, just give me a chance, get me into camp, right? That's all I want, an opportunity. I knew that I'd be able to fight my way on to some way, somehow. But Blaine, like you said, it wasn't easy. This wasn't easy, man. I mean, going into camp, and I was literally, the Steelers had a 3-4 defense, like I mentioned earlier. And so they had 10 guys in camp, 10 defensive linemen. Well, I was the 10th guy. So I was the backup at nose, the fourth teamer at nose, the fourth teamer at both ends. I mean, my signing bonus was $2,500.
Oh my goodness!
After taxes, it was like $1,700 and change. It gave me enough gas money for me and my wife and my oldest son, Kate, to drive out to Pittsburgh for camp. That's about it. I was broke after I paid for gas, right? And so that's all I had. And but I got into camp, and luckily, one of my best buds, Casey Hampton, he held out. He held out for a few extra bucks, and it gave me an opportunity to get some snaps that I wouldn't have gotten if he didn't hold out. And was able to prove that I can do some things. I still was raw, man. I still had a lot to learn in that 3-4 defense. But Coach Cowher saw something in me during that training camp. And but it wasn't easy, man. I remember a couple of times calling my wife thinking, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, there's no way. I mean, I was waking up in sweats in the middle of the night, just sweating because I just was having nightmares about, not what was going to happen. But it all worked out. The Lord had a plan, and it worked out perfect for me.
You played 11 seasons with the Steelers. Yep. You won 2 Super Bowls. You got that lamp behind you, which is awesome. So you got that going for you. And before we talk about some of those moments, how much fun was it spending most of those years with fellow Cougar Brett Kiesel there on the defensive line? How unique was that?
Well, it was awesome. Listen, I mean, I remember going through my first year, and then Brett got picked up, and I think it was 7th round. And he came out, and it was awesome. He was playing with your brother, and that position, the defensive line, we had 4 guys during my time. I played there for 11 years, but there were 10 years where we had the same 4 guys of the 6 that they kept that we played together. I mean, Brett, having that comfort with Brett and Sarah, his wife, a lot of our kids have the same age, and then the other guys. I mean, we stuck together. We became like a family. And so to have that relationship with Brett, and we're still close. He just lives down the street. And the other guys, it was special because, Brett knew who I was. He knew what made me tick. And it was fun to watch Brett. I mean, Brett blew up, man. He did a great job and had some really great years for the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
You play in 114 games. Started 18 times, finished with 83 tackles, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery, and 2 Super Bowl rings. The first of those was in 2005, where you had a tackle in that Pittsburgh Super Bowl win over Seattle. You guys won 21-10 in that game. Was winning the Super Bowl everything you thought it would be? What was that like?
Well, listen, it was huge. And people always ask me, what was the best one? We played in 3 Super Bowls, that team, right? Super Bowl 40, 43, and 45. And we won 40 and 43, lost 45 to the Packers. It was everything you could dream of, right? That first game that we played in, we were up in Detroit, and we were playing against the Seattle Seahawks. And that was probably the greatest one because you had never been there before. It was all new. It was raw. It was just going through it was just a thrill and something you dreamt about your whole life. And so playing in that game, and I'll tell you what, a cool story about that tackle for a loss against Sean Alexander and that Seahawks. The night before the game, Coach Cowher came into the defensive meeting room there at the hotel, and he goes, listen, I was watching film. We're going to throw in this strong storm defense. And we line up in our double bubble look, nose over the center to it, tackles over the ends, and then linebackers over the guards off the ball. And what we're going to do, we're going to bring the safety down, and we're going to storm them off the strong side, and we're all going to move this way because they like to run this play. And it was that play I shot. We called strong storm. I shot the weak side A gap away from the strength and redirected as the guard was trying to cut me off. I was able to hit his inside shoulder and redirect and get Alexander in the backfield. It was a great play, a great moment for me. But just as a guy who came out as an undrafted free agent to be able to play in the Super Bowl was amazing. I mean, if I can add one more story.
Sure. Yes, of course.
I think what's really great is, you talk about those 18 starts. If you know, in those 18 starts, the record was 17-1.
Oh, man.
We were 17-1 in those 18 games I started. And it wasn't because of me. It was because I was replacing a guy who was one of the best Steelers that ever played for the Steelers, in Casey Hampton, first rounder out of Texas. But everybody stepped up, but it was a special time. And that one loss that we had is kind of a funny deal. We lost. We were out in Oakland playing the Raiders. We held them to 97 yards
of total offense.
Yeah.
How do you lose? How do you lose in the NFL?
A fumble return for a touchdown, and he had a pick six return for a touchdown, and we lost like 14-6 or something like that. It was just unbelievable. It was one of those games. It was kind of like when we lost to the Texans here at Heinz Field. We gave up 47 yards of total offense to the Texans. And we lost that game. Just one of those freak games. When you play long enough, you're going to have those.
Former Steeler.
Hey, Chris, I feel your pain because anybody that watched us play in 1985 against Ohio State in the Citrus Bowl will know that they beat us 10-6 or 10-7?
10-7.
Yeah, and on their 10 points, they returned an interception to the 1-yard line and scored a touchdown. Then they had another interception, got thrown for a sack, and kicked a field goal. I think they had 10 points on minus 11 yards of total offense.
Unbelievable.
It's just like, how does that even happen, right?
Yeah, when you play the game long enough, you're going to have those kind of games, especially against the Texans weren't very good that year, or the Raiders weren't very good. It's like, what in the heck just happened?
Yeah,
you're flying home from Oakland going, what in the world?
Those games happen.
97 total yards and lose?
Former Steeler and BYU Cougar Chris Hoke on the Wise Guys tonight. He finished his senior season at BYU in 2000 with 15 tackles for loss, earned second-team All-Mountain West Conference honors. Steelers back in the big game in 2009 for the wild 27-23 win against Arizona. Now, there was a swing of emotions in the last 4 minutes of that game. Let's go through them. First, the defense gives up a bomb to Larry Fitzgerald, and the Cardinals go up by 3 with 2:37 to go. What happened?
Just somebody biting, we called it biting the cheese. Somebody saw something underneath. And Coach LeBeau and Keith Butler, who was the linebacker coach at the time, became the Steelers D coordinator when LeBeau left. They talk about all the time, don't bite the cheese. And you have guys that come up and they see something underneath. And you always remember, this, Blaine, as a quarterback, when you have somebody running an underneath route, there's somebody right behind them running right across them. And you're trying to get a guy, a safety or linebacker, to bite on that inside route or underneath route, throw over the top. And I won't call anybody out, but somebody bit on the cheese, and the ball was thrown. And it's a nice throw to Larry, and I could have played that a little better. Ike Taylor, our corner, but it was a play. But it set up for a dramatic ending to win.
Yes. So quarterback Ben Roethlisberger drives the team down the field. He hits Antonio Holmes with a game winner with 35 seconds left in the game. Happiness is restored. What did that feel like?
It was unbelievable. I mean, it was crazy. And listen, we always felt we were so confident those teams, Blaine. We always felt like we were going to win a game. We worked so hard during the week. We practiced. There were times when we'd get out there on Sunday and the game felt like it slowed down compared to how hard Coach Cowher practiced us. And so we got out there. We always felt confident we were going to win. So even when they scored that touchdown, we knew, hey, we got an opportunity. We got a chance. And we were in the Super Bowl. We won the last one we won. We're going to march down this field. And to start it off, if you remember, I think it was the first play of that drive, Chris K. Moyati, Utah Ute.
Yeah.
False starts. So we're sitting at first and 15 to start that drive. And we still marched down that field. This one of the greatest finishes to that game. And I'll tell you what, the one thing that set that up, that would have never happened if at the end of the first half, James Harrison would have intercepted that ball and took it back for a touchdown in the half.
That's right. There's plays. Everybody thinks the plays won in the last game, last play of the game, but there's little plays all along the way that make a difference, and they forget about a pick six that sets you up to be in a position, and then people always forget about what happens in the first half, but it's all part of the game. We're going to talk to you about, so I want to ask you one other thing. We're going to get into some bigger picture stuff, and maybe this is a big picture thing too, Chris. I want to talk about the fact that I always felt like you were a great fit for the Steelers because of the way you would just grind. I remember you as a grinder when I was covering you at BYU, and it feels like we were teammates because everybody that played for the last 34 years, 38 years because I played for 5 years, and then I've known everybody, and you all feel like brothers to me, even though Chris is way younger than me, everybody, just so you guys know. But I always felt like, man, Chris is going to do great with the Steelers because of the way he grinds. And I knew that Bill was that kind of coach and that you would be a great fit there. But I want to give people shed a little bit of light. And I hope you remember this. You were there the first year, and you called me, and you said, hey, dude, I want to update my resume. And I was like, what are you talking about, update your resume? Like, you're grinding. You're going to make this team. And you're like, I'm Blaine, I'm going to grind, and you know I'm going to grind like nobody's business. But I always have a plan B. So I want to update my resume because I want to get in med device if this doesn't work. You help me update the resume. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. So we worked on a little bit. So now you make the team, and you're a regular part of the rotation, and year 2 comes in the offseason, and you say to me, hey, can we go over my resume again? And I'm like, of course we can go over your resume. I'm like, dude, you're making the team. Like, will you please stop with this? You're going to make the team. Then you did it year 3. So for 3 years, you checked in with me to make sure that your plan B resume was in shape, but every time promising me that this didn't mean anything other than you were prepared, but you were going to go grind with a chip on your shoulder. And then finally by year 4, I'm like, dude, you got to stop with this nonsense. Like, you're going to be on this team for as long as you want to be on the team. And then we stopped updating the resume. To me, that's a great lesson to everybody that's listening about playing with a chip on your shoulder, about never thinking you've arrived. Am I misreading that, or is that part of who you are, and is that why you played for 11 seasons in the NFL?
No, you're totally reading it. There were a couple. That was how I approached every day. And listen, I was in my 10th season, and I approached it like my first. And I kind of created that experience. I created that mindset every single time with the camp. And I always felt like I was the guy they were looking to replace me. And there was a point there, like my 4th year, when I knew that there was about 5-6 years there that, I was going to make the team. But I created that feeling within me, right? Like, hey, I'm one play away from being cut. And so you're exactly right. And what I felt was, I was a new father. My son Cade was born in January, right after my senior year at BYU. So I felt the responsibility to provide for my family. So I thought, listen, if this doesn't work out, I got to have something to fall back on, right? But as things went on, I always created that mentality like I'm one play away from being cut. They're trying to replace me. They're bringing guys in, and I think that's what gave me the edge. I mean, Blaine, if you knew how many sleepless nights I had in training camp, it probably adds up to a year or more of sleepless nights, because I played 11 seasons and 30 plus 45 days in training camp. I mean, a lot of sleepless nights. And because I always felt like this could be my last day. And it worked out for me. Sometimes I wish I would have enjoyed it a little more and wouldn't have created that mindset, that mentality. But it worked out for 11 years. Well,
I've always felt like that, when I think of the Chris Hoke story, I think of that because I think of this is a guy that was crazy talented, but never would let himself believe he was too talented to work, right? And what a lesson for young players, right? Like, you gotta grind no matter how gifted you are, and that's the difference between okay and great. And you've been a great example of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the thing is, you've heard this saying before. And Hines Ward, who was a great teammate, and he wore the shirt all the time because he was counted out a lot because he wasn't the most talented guy. And he'd always wear a shirt that I really, really connected with. It said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. There were a lot of guys that came into the NFL that were more talented as me, but they weren't willing to pay the price.
A few more questions for former Steeler nose and defensive tackle Chris Hoke on the Wise Guys. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. How have your playing days at BYU, and especially in Pittsburgh, helped you be an effective president of the Pittsburgh North Stake? What did the game teach you about life?
I think it taught me hard work. Listen, it takes hard work to play in the NFL. It's hard to get in the NFL. It's even harder to stay. It takes even more work. And as a stake president, you got to work. You've got to be anxiously engaged in the work of the Lord every single day. And it takes a focus. It takes an effort. It takes a desire to do everything the Lord's asking you to do, because there's a lot that we're being asked to do, right? And so that work ethic and that passion, you can see that I have passion. I have passion for life. I have passion. The passion you see right now is the passion that I have for my calling. I love serving the Lord, and I love doing that. And so that's one of the things that I'll tell you what, my passion for football, guys, was truly, truly strengthened throughout those 11 years, because I had to embrace every element, every aspect of the game of football, right? I had Casey Hampton, my best buds. He was so gifted and so talented. He could show up out there and just play and dominate. That's how good he was. I had to embrace every aspect of the game of football. I had to watch film more than anybody. I had to go out there and practice before and after practice more than anybody. I had to know that playbook inside and out. And I've taken that same passion to everything I do outside of football now. And I've taken that same passion and just really the enthusiasm to the work.
Let's talk about it in reverse, because I've always known you as a man of faith, and I've known you for almost 30 years now. Like, I met you the first time in 1994. Isn't that crazy? Where did all these years go, Chris? But 1994, I met you, and then you headed off on a mission. I've always known you as a man of faith. How did your faith throughout this whole time help you maintain some semblance of normalcy and a connection to our Heavenly Father while you're in this game that's such a tough game and so violent? How did that keep you grounded?
It did, because I knew that who was the source of all my strength. I knew the Savior was the one who was going to give me all the strength I needed. And I realized that if I ever forgot about him and forgot about what he's done for me, what he's given me, that as quickly as everything was given to me in the NFL, it could be taken away. And I really felt that way. And so I made sure that my faith was front and center. We played on Sundays. There were times when I didn't get to church, and I had my little, it wasn't the same. I wasn't able to partake of the sacrament, which is important and critical as we receive strength each week. But the reality is, I took my mornings and I would read the scriptures on Sunday wherever I was at, and I would kneel down and pray, and I would do all those things I need to do to make sure that I connect with the Father and the Son. And that was super important to me, right? I remember sitting in a locker room before games, being overwhelmed and being just super stressed out, and singing "Be Still My Soul" in my mind and my heart, and pleading with the Lord to and I remember singing "I Need Thee Every Hour." I remember sitting in the locker room many times and just singing those songs to bring me comfort and peace through the Spirit. It played a major role. I also knew the importance of family, right? The NFL is a unique environment and culture, and people can allow the NFL to get the best of them. And I knew how important my family was to me, and I knew that one decision could ruin my eternal destiny. And so I knew how important it was to be there with my wife, Jamie, and be there with my kids and be a father, and not get caught up in the NFL lifestyle. So that again, understanding the family, understanding the role of the family in receiving eternal life. I grasped all that. I knew all that. And so it was front and center in my life, and I wasn't going to let anything get in the way.
So So if you're singing "Be Still My Soul" in the locker room, you get out there on the defensive line. Are you singing "Master, the Tempest is Raging" as you go after the quarterback?
That's right. I'm singing that and going, no, yeah, that's funny. I'll tell you this, though. I remember one time we were in a preseason game against the Green Bay Packers, and William Gay, who played for the Steelers, came down to make a tackle. I was playing the weak side A gap, and he came to shoot the B gap on the weak side, and he got spun around and took out my leg. I thought I tore my knee up. This is preseason, and it was still those years when I was battling. And I remember being there on the field in complete pain and just praying for help, praying for grace, praying for strength, and the ability that this wasn't as bad as it felt. And I felt the Lord with me the whole time.
Amazing.
That's great. All right, a couple more, and then we're going to hit you with 5 questions and let you get back to your work. How's Elder Nate Hoke doing? Where is he serving, and when are we going to see him?
Oh, man. So Elder Nate Hoke, he's going to come home, one day shy of 2 months. He'll be home May 20th. He's in Bahia Blanca, Argentina. He's an assistant to the president. Couldn't be prouder. He's just a hardworking guy. It's been fun to watch his growth and development on his mission. You know, the mission provides experiences and opportunities for growth that no other experience provides. And it's a beautiful thing to watch my son and watch him grow spiritually and watch his foundation become more and more solid, more and more firm and steadfast in the cause of Christ. And man, it's awesome to see. And we just talked to him yesterday because it was Monday, and he's excited to come home. He's excited to jump back in. He's good shape, man. This kid got a lot of potential. He's 6'3", about 215, 220, and he's lost a little bit of weight on his mission. But the good thing is he's long, he's broad-shouldered. He played an inside linebacker in high school, so really he's got a lot of position flexibility. He can play.
Can he play?
Anywhere.
Because you and I have talked about him before. Because he's got that length and range. He could play inside. He could play outside. He could even move down and play a rush end. Right? He could play any of those.
Exactly. That's what I was telling my wife yesterday after we hung up on the call, is because he played. I said, listen, he played inside linebacker in high school, and so he understands all those reads. Right? He understands how to play that. It would be harder if he was DN trying to send him play inside linebacker. So he's played that. He could play outside linebacker. You said he could play edge. He could play he could probably put on some weight and play DN. Right? I mean, that's the difference when you're a 6'3" kid with long arms and broad shoulders. And so I'm excited to see him come back and see his growth in that way.
Fun stuff.
So are we going to see him fall semester in class out here getting going, or what?
I'm not sure yet. I know that they have these guys that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes there's a little delay there, so
That's
I apologize
okay.
if I'm talking over you. I don't know exactly. Sure, I was out there a couple weeks ago, and I think there's a deal there where they kind of like to grace some of these guys because he's coming home May 20th. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I know that he would like to get out there and train and let's see where he's at and let chips fall where they may. And if it's gray shirt, it's gray shirt. He's still a pup, guys. I mean, he'll come home from his mission May 20th. He's still 19 for 8 more days. So he's a youngin.
That's young. Yeah,
so
it's an interesting so Kalani came in. Chris, give you a little, and I know you've been talking to these guys, and they noticed the percentage of guys back from their mission in their first year of serious injuries compared to everybody else was off the charts, like not good. And so a couple of things. First of all, they changed out some things in the strength staff because they want to do things differently. But Kalani said, every single person that I can have come work out with the team in gray shirt to get their feet back under them, and it's not so much their musculature and their strength and speed. That comes back fairly quick. It's the connective tissue and all those things that take a little bit of time that they've lost during the 2 years, that he's just so worried about the well-being of these kids that if at all possible, they want to let them have at least a full fall semester to work out, be with the team, learn things before they stick them back out there and put them at risk. And he's holding pretty hard to that.
Yeah.
And then Logan Fano came as one of the top recruits in the country. And he was so good that they said, maybe we need to make an exception for Logan. And then he tore his ACL.
Yeah.
And then I think
Blaine, I got to push back on that a little bit, buddy. Friendly. An ACL is a freak thing, man. I just don't think an ACL. I mean, my boy Cade came back and he he in that last scrimmage at LaVell Stadium, he broke his thumb. We can blame that on the mission. I mean, come on, that's not a mission, a broken thumb. But I see what you're saying. Why are we only hearing about this now with Kalani's team? But before that, nobody ever talked about it.
Yeah.
Well, here I've talked about. Hey, Chris, I've talked about it for 10 years now because BYU's injury rate for return missionaries is ridiculous. We had 1 year, Chris, more ACL injuries than the entire Big 12 conference. 1 year.
That could be something to do with the strength training because
they're looking at that too. But
there's exercises you can do to really protect that ACL, and if you don't have the right strength in the quad and right strength in certain parts of your hips and flexibility, you're putting too much pressure on the football.
I've had a lot of conversations with orthopedic surgeons because that's my business, and here's what they say. They say that muscle, you lose it quick, you get it back quick. Connective tissue grows and thickens and strengthens over your entire lifetime. It's really, really slow. Over 2 years out on a mission, it thins. And it takes way longer for your ligaments and tendons, so shoulder injuries, ligament injuries, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It takes those much longer than it takes the muscles to come back. And so all of a sudden, you're playing with a torque level that those haven't had a chance to thicken up and get tough and weathered again, right? And so this is all theoretical because nobody's done a study on it, but I would tell you there's a lot of orthopedic surgeons I talk to that go, yeah, I think that's a thing. I think they need longer for that stuff to strengthen up.
I think there's something to that, but I also think there's something to not hitting enough. Man, listen, we banged when we played. Blaine, you know that. When I was at the Steelers, when I first got to the Steelers, we hit. Man, we hit. And you talk to some of these guys that played in the 80s for the Steelers, and you got to condition your body, and you got to work your way into it. And if you're only hitting full speed twice a week, of course you're going to hurt yourself. Why do you think there's more injuries in the NFL right now than ever?
Yeah,
because they don't practice hard. They don't hit.
You would happy to know, Chris, that Dave and I went to practice the other day, and they were going live when we were at spring ball. We loved it. It was so fun.
That's what you got to do. If you want to have a physical team, practice physical. If you want to have a soft team, don't put pads on.
Well, it was funny because I'd said to Dave, I was like, here's the hard part. I want to see who these running backs are, but they'll never tackle him to ground, so we won't know. And then we went to practice, and I go, oh, my bad. They're tackling him to the ground. This is great.
There's something to be said about conditioning your body for the grind.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? If you're not conditioning your body for the grind, you're going to have these injuries. So, Logan, I bet you go back and you look at the time leading up to that, I bet you he had very few full contact or putting strain on those ligaments and tendons before that. I've been wondering, there was only a couple practices before that.
Yeah, and he looked like Logan looked like he looked like Hercules musculature, but he'd only been back. Like I've never seen a kid look like Hercules so fast after a mission. Like he looked like the part, and I was like, oh man, and then he was, but. Yeah, who knows? They've got to do.
It's too bad we lost him too, man. That's a tough loss. Yeah.
When we see Elder Hoke, we will corner him.
Yes,
and then we'll get him on Wise Guys and pick his brain and see how much Steeler blood he's got in him.
I got a daughter coming to BYU next year too for gymnastics, so that's exciting.
So, you want to know what? The Elder and Sister Hoke both need to know that the Fowler House is close to campus, and when they need a little taste of home, they just need to come over and hop in the hot tub and have a visit.
I will let them know that. Well, I'll make sure that the introduction is made this August.
Absolutely. You got to let us get to know them a little bit. Brendan, we don't have kids at home anymore, so we love when anybody comes to visit us. So
let's wrap up with 5 questions for you. Ready?
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay. You don't even get to think about them. You just have to what comes to your head.
I'm not real good at this kind of thing, but I'll do my best.
You got these. Favorite sports movie?
Oh, Rudy. No question.
I love because there's this big divide between Rudy and Remember the Titans. I'm a Rudy guy.
Yeah, my kids are Remember the Titans. I'm a Rudy guy.
Yes,
okay. That was important to me when I was in high school.
Yep. Favorite singer or band?
Favorite singer or band? Listen. My all-time favorite is Billy Joel. I'll go Billy Joel or U2.
All right.
Nice. Those are good ones. Hey, Journey is coming to Stadium Fire this summer.
It's gonna be great.
It'll be pretty fun. Awesome. Favorite breakfast cereal?
I'm not a cereal guy, but I would say if I was a granola.
Oh, see, now he's going with the Danny Ainge eat healthy thing.
Listen, Kyle Van Noy.
My breakfast of choice is peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's
See, now I'm feeling you. Now I'm feeling you. So granola. Okay, we're going to let you do that just because you did the caveat that you'd rather have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Kyle Van Noy was on with us a couple weeks ago, and he said no cereal at his house. And then you've come back with granola. We're on a losing streak of cold cereals.
Because everybody else said Lucky Charms and Fruit Loops, which I was really happy about. That made me feel good about myself. But now the granola thing. And that's why Chris is so thin right now. Look at him. He's looked good. So, favorite NFL quarterback to sack?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. I think the one that the sack, I was able to get down Aaron Rodgers one time back early in his career.
I love it.
Did you say anything to him when you had him down?
No, I think I got up so fast because I was so fired up that I didn't say a word except for I started screaming.
And he may be with the Jets before we know it. I don't know. That thing's not working out so well. Your favorite Lavelle Edwards memory?
Oh, goodness. You know what? It's a great story. I remember going to see him before my mission. And I was there as a true freshman and then left for 2 years. And I was super nervous about going on a mission. I thought, oh, man, if I go away from this game for 2 years, there's no way I'm going to be able to come back and be able to play at the level that I'm playing right now. Because I felt like I had a pretty good redshirt year working against Roger French and those old linemen. I felt like I really improved. And but I knew I needed to serve a mission. And I remember going to see Coach Edwards in his office, he and I, and sharing with him some of my concerns. And he just comforted me. And he assured me that I was supposed to go on a mission. And he told me, I remember this just so clearly, that he said, hey, if you go out and serve the Lord, you will come back and be a better football player than you were when you left. And sure enough, I mean, it was almost prophetic. I came back, and I mean, it was beautiful. And I really always appreciated that experience with him because I knew where his priorities were. He was a football coach.
Yeah.
He was really a leader of men more than that.
Yeah. The amazing impact that he's had on so many of us. And then the last one, this is a bonus question. I'm giving you the sixth one because it's always fun. Best advice you ever received from your wife, Jamie?
Oh, goodness. Best advice I ever received from my wife, Jamie. Shoot, she's giving me so much good advice. I'm just trying to think what the best one is. You know what? I think she helped me to really be a really good father. And it was just to love my children unconditionally and always be there for them. I feel very blessed to have the family that I have. We're a very close family. And so just to love my children and to love them hard and to be there for them. And that's all been, I don't know if there's really a line, but this kind of like the message she's always shared. And I feel like it's come back tenfold.
Are you the first stake president in the church who is formally introduced each time you speak as a two-time Super Bowl champion? Is that President, two-time Super Bowl champion, President Hoke will address us?
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
You know what's funny is
I don't know any others.
There may be. I mean, what would Vi had? How many did Vi have? Did Vi have a Super Bowl? He didn't have any Super Bowls.
I didn't have any Super Bowls.
No, Vi's a pathetic loser compared to you.
You know what? It's interesting. It's one of those things that that everybody knows about, and I become. It's funny in the church. People just look at me, President Hoke. They don't look at me as a Pittsburgh Steeler. But when you walk out of that building, in those buildings that we go into every Sunday throughout the stake, I'm not known as a stake president. I'm known as Chris Hoke, Pittsburgh Steeler. Because I still have a presence on TV. I still do the post-game shows. I still do a radio show during the week.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of who I am outside of, but who I really am is what goes on in those buildings every Sunday.
We appreciate having you on the Wise Guys and how you represent BYU and your family and just spectacular. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, guys. Thanks for being patient with me, Dave. And I sure appreciate you guys having me on and go Cougs.
Anything you need from us, just holler. And we look forward to seeing your kids this fall.
You got our numbers, Chris. Anything you need, you got it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful time. Thanks for having me on.
The great Chris Hoke